everyone. In this series of videos, we will discuss the Agile Scrum method from A to Z, namely the project management methodology, its fundamentals, concepts, and tools. In this first part, we will discuss the introduction. Let's start with the introduction to Scrum, with the Scrum fundamentals and the first overview of Scrum. Then we will talk about the main differences between the Scrum method and the waterfall methods. Finally, we will conclude with the origins of Scrum, its history and its foundation. First of all, what is Scrum? Scrum is a framework that helps you solve problems and bring value to your projects. It is also an agile methodology and is the most popular methodology. There is a reason for that. Indeed, it is known for its simplicity and power, and it is also an iterative approach over time, meaning that it's something that you go through and it's continuously improved in a punctual way. We see the notion of sprint. We will talk about it and come back to it later. Keep in mind that a sprint is a small box in which something is delivered. In Agile, more specifically in Scrum, we talk about a sprint which is generally 2 weeks and can go up to 4 weeks. Most Scrum teams will use a 2-week period. Fast and continuous improvement. Effectively, you deliver and progressively improve what you deliver. Scrum is a very value-oriented and fast. It is about delivering often in an iterative and incremental way. The other advantage of Scrums is that in Scrum you are very adaptable, very flexible, and very fast. So you don't need the whole solution at the beginning. You can well learn from it and adapt. So you are very flexible with what you deliver. The most important thing to remember is that Scrum is just a different and faster way to deliver projects. It allows you to solve your business problems, to bring value to your customer. Next, we will discuss the difference between Scrum and Waterfall. We will see Scrum as the new method and Waterfall as a traditional method. Keep in mind that both methods will allow you to reach the same goal. The only difference will be in the how. We will see in the first point the fast delivery with a focus on the value and the customer for Scrum, and on the other, the long-term delivery with a focus on the requirements for Waterfall. In Waterfall, the activity and requirements are more focused than the value and the customer. When you work this way, there is a certain requirement. It is about achieving certain objectives that are mainly commercial. In general, you have to respect deadlines and budgets, which is not at all the objective of Scrum. The Scrum method will be more customer-focused and value-driven. In the second point, we have on one side iterative and on the other sequential. In Scrum, we deliver in an iterative way. You build something and then you build something better and so on. In the waterfall method, it is more sequential. You have phases. That is to say that you start, for example, with the planning, and then you go to the test, and then you go to the delivery, and finally to the closing. In Scrum, it is not like that. You actually work on things. Everything is done all the time. Tests are done all the time. You plan and deliver all the time. This is one of the major differences between Scrum and Waterfall. Third point, with variable and negotiable scope on one side and fixed scope on the other. In Scrum, we can adjust, we can do differently and even better, whereas in Waterfall, change is rather frowned upon. If a change has to take place, you will probably have to go through a whole change process that can be complicated. In Scrum, it is the opposite. Change is welcomed. You constantly talk to the customer as well as the team. You talk to them about how to do better, how to improve, what should be done differently in the next sprints. In the first point, we will see the continuous reflection for improvement and the lessons learned at the end of the project. In Scrum, we have a continuous reflection, which is done throughout the project, during the sprint, and so on. In Waterfall, we meet at the end of the project to talk about what could have been done differently or what can be changed for the next project, and that can be wasted time. The fifth point, we have the frequent test on one side and the test during one phase on the other. In Waterfall, for example, they complete the planning and then move on testing. There are several phases before arriving at the test, whereas in Scrum you test continuously. What you do is dynamic and evolving, like everything else in Scrum. We are constantly improving. Indeed, you learn continuously how to test better the next time, what you shouldn't do before testing because you have already learned it during your previous sprints. This is something very important in Scrum. Finally, there are the roles, the fuzzy role on one side and the defined roles on the other. Generally, we find important roles like the management team, the sales team, the project owner, and so on. In Scrum, traditional roles sometimes don't apply. For example, a business analyst can help with project management and testing. It is acceptable to play the role of someone to help. It's a real teamwork. In Waterfall, the roles are defined. That is to say that each one has his place and each one has his task to realize. That's it for the differences between these two methods, and I have found the image that illustrates everything I'm saying. On top is the waterfall model and on the bottom the agile model. We can imagine that a customer asked to move from point A to point B, and in both methods we will propose a car. The only difference will be on the how. The waterfall method is in red because throughout the project the customer will not be satisfied. Indeed, we can see that first we will show him a wheel. Of course, it's for a car, but I still cannot move from point A to point B, and so on. The chassis still does not allow me to move. The chassis plus the body is the same. I still cannot move without the steering wheel. Finally, we return the car so the customer will be satisfied, but after several months. In the agile method, we can see that we will first propose a skateboard. The customer will be satisfied since he will be able to move from point A to point B, and we will go from improvement to improvement since we will propose to him a scooter, then a bike, then a motorcycle, to finally finish with the car. During all these deliveries, all these phases, the customer will be able to move from point A to point B. I hope this is a little clearer for you. We will conclude with the origins of Scrum. I have chosen an image that perfectly illustrates the values of Scrum. It all started in the 80s when two Japanese guys named Hirotaka Takeuchi and Ikujiro Nanoka first introduced the term Scrum while working on the product development article. They took this expression from rugby, and we see rugby player in the picture. In rugby, players stick their heads together, look down together, and act together to progress on the field. They are all lowered in a circle, and their roles are not important. They are equal and interchangeable, and that's why the two Japanese use this term, because they found a lot of similarities with what they were trying to convey in this article. A little later, in the 90s, two Americans named Ken Schwaber and Jeff Chatterland structured Scrum in a framework. They pushed the concept a little further and developed a methodology. In 2009, they co-authored what is known as the Scrum Guide. Today, they are recognized as the founders of Scrum. That's it for this chapter. I hope you liked it, and I say to you soon for the continuation. Hello, we meet again for this new video for the continuation of the course on Agile Scrum from A to Z. It's a project management methodology and we will see its fundamentals, concepts and tools. For the second chapter, we will see the culture of Scrum. We'll start by looking at the pillars and principles of Scrum, a solid foundation as a culture. We will then look at the values of Scrum, the essence of Scrum as a culture, and we will finish with the aspects and strengths of Scrums. The pillars of Scrum. There are 3 pillars. The transparency, which means that the important aspects of the process must be visible. Inspection, which means that the team must consult each other on a daily basis in order to quickly detect any discrepancies between the objective of the iteration and the work carried out. And finally, adaptation, which means that in the event of a deviation from desired results, adjustments are made. These 3 pillars are closely linked to each other. Generally, they are chained together to be able to respond to each other. For example, we usually start by creating transparency, which will make problems visible. Once the problems are visible, they will have to be inspected, and thanks to this inspection, we will be able to adapt through actions that will improve the situation. Transparency is a very real factor here, and inspection and adaptation allow for continuous adjustment of the development of a product. Next, we will look at the principles of Scrum. There are 6 of them: empirical process control, self-organization, collaboration, value-based and prioritization, time box that we will call sprint, and iterative development. Empirical process control is an approach that is essentially about learning from practice, learning from experience. This is exactly what Scrum does. They look at things and learn from them, and that's how the 3 pillars we just saw are reflected: transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Second, self-organization. In Scrum, teams organize themselves to define what they are going to work on, to define their priorities, and so on. There is no manager. This is the main difference, and so they organize themselves. The collaboration is like in rugby. I already explained it to you with the teams that sticks together, that advances along, that progresses all together on the field for the same objective. In Scrum, it's the same. The collaboration is huge. You work closely with the team and sometimes even with other stakeholders who are not part of the team. Then, value-based and prioritization is essentially about the customer. What we want to do is focus on the things that will bring more value to the customer. The time box, called Sprint, is a period during which we have to deliver. In Scrum, this period is usually 2 weeks and can go up to 4 weeks. But it's true that in the Agile method, we remain flexible and you can easily adapt this period to your needs. Finally, iterative development is not focusing on the final solution because it takes time to deliver. Iterative development provides weekly value and we keep improving it until we get to the final solution. These 6 principles are very explicit and speak for themselves. I don't really need to detail them for you. We will then continue on the values of Scrum. There is courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness. We are going to start with courage, which is about trying to think outside the box, trying to do things differently. In Scrum, it's going to be a little bit of the same, and it's going to be about knowing that you have that energy and strength to make decisions that are sometimes difficult. The focus is on short-term deliveries, not long-term ones. Commitment refers to being fully engaged when you decide to do something, you deliver on time, on budget, and as written. Respect is a very important value in Scrum. We encourage people to talk and share with each other, to be respected and to respect others, even if they have a different opinion than us. This is what brings value, a positive change. Finally, the openness that recalls the pillar of transparency we saw earlier. It is exactly the same principle. That's it for the Scrum principles. I hope that was clear enough. Next, we'll look at the aspects of Scrum. We will start with the organization that corresponds to the way the team organizes itself as for the deliveries and the different real. We'll see it later, but you should know that there is a type of organization. Then we have the commercial justification. This is the business assessment that is done before starting a project. It helps the key decision makers to understand the needs of the business. Quality is about reassurance, about making sure that everything we deliver complies with acceptance criteria. Then, the change that has already been mentioned, it is the fact of being adaptable and flexible, simply of being open to change. Last but not least, the risk. There will always be risks when you deliver something, and you have to know how to analyze these risks, understand them, and thus minimize them, mitigate them. That's it for the aspects, and we will finish with the strengths of Scrum. By strengths, I mean assets, and especially the elements that make it so powerful. There are 5 of them. We will tell me that we have already seen them. Yes, indeed. These are terms that we have already discussed during this course, and I have often repeated them to you. First point, delivery and continuous improvement. Second point, empowerment. Third point, cross-functional teams. Fourth point, self-organization. And last point, focus on short-term goals. The reason Scrum is so popular is because the method is very cost effective for the business. These elements generate a lot of value for the team. When you're able to make decisions, when you're autonomous, when you're working with people from different fields, when you're continuously improving and delivering, that's when you start bringing value to the table, and that's when it gets interesting. This is why Scrum is so powerful. These 5 elements are what make it so powerful. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoy it, and see you soon for the continuation. Hello everyone, we will continue on this series of videos on the Agile Scrum method from A to Z. Today we are going to talk more specifically about project management. We will start with quality in Scrum and change. We will continue with risk in Scrum, how to manage risk in your projects with Scrum. And we will conclude with what Scrum is for, real work, real life Scrum applications. So to begin with, let's talk about quality. There are several points to remember. The first is the fact that we test often and not only at the end, as in traditional project methods. I have already told you about this, so I won't go into more detail. It is quite explicit. Second point is that it's not just the responsibility of one person. Indeed, in the traditional project management method, there is usually a tester and the responsibility is on him. In Scrum, quality is everyone's responsibility. Everyone wants to make sure that what is delivered meets the acceptance criteria that the team has agreed upon. You know that in Scrum there are many times when other people test, so you get a fresh look and make sure that everything is in order. The third point is that we respond to the standards and that we do not seek perfection. Here it will be more the notion of standards and not of perfection. In Scrum, this concerns the basic agile concept called MVP. MVP stands for minimum viable product, and it also has to do with the key concept in agile of keeping things simple, obviously without compromising on quality, since we have to provide good products. The fourth point is continuous improvement, which has already been discussed at length. You know that this is a basic concept with continuous improvement and iterative development. This continuous improvement is therefore part of what is called in Scrum a retrospective. We are constantly thinking about how we can improve in the next sprint. That's it for quality, and now I'm going to talk about change in Scrum. We have talked about that quite a bit too. We have talked about how change is very well received, how it's well seen and accepted. Change is done when needed. That is, you don't want to make changes that are not necessary. The goal is to keep it simple and not reinvent things. Why change something that works? When it works, we keep using it. Client feedbacks is incorporated into the deliverables. Indeed, if people in the company, stakeholders, or the project owner let us know that we need to make changes or do something differently, we won't complain. We will listen to them and understand why they are making these comments. We will do everything we can to make solutions to these changes. In Scrum, we are very open. Then I will tell you about the risks. In Scrum, we want to make sure that risks are identified, assessed, and understood. We have to assess the probability of it happening. If it did happen, what would happen? What could happen to us? What would we do? All of this is noted in a file that we call the risk file. This can be simply a Word document on Trello, on Jira, or Microsoft Planner. There are many tools that allow you to document risks. The description of the risks, the probability of occurrence, whether it has been taken care of, whether it has already been done, and so on. In short, these will be key elements that will be integrated in this file. Then, what can you use Scrum for? This is a question that often comes up. You can use it to deliver, create, achieve, and provide. I will come back to this in more detail. Indeed, you can use it to create value, to deliver iterative results, to continuously improve, to deliver in short time. Scrum gives more control over delivery and budgets. You can use Scrum in any type of business, in projects of various sizes. It can be medium projects or large projects. It can be marketing projects, sales projects, procurement projects. You can use it as a hybrid method. You don't necessarily have to use it exclusively. When I say hybrid method, I mean combining it with a traditional method, for example. So it all depends on your project. Scrum makes it possible to reach the objectives, the goals more quickly, and it makes it possible to bring value to the customer. It allows flexibility and adaptability in the different tasks. You can also use Scrum in your research to identify your viable technologies and market capabilities. It is also possible to use it to develop products, services, and improvements, and to publish these products and improvements. It can also be used to develop and sustain, to maintain and renew, in other words, to maintain a competitive advantage in the market. That is it for this course. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope I was clear and concise. See you soon for the rest. Hello everyone, we will continue on this shoot of Agile Scrum videos from A to Z. In this fourth chapter, we will discuss the Scrum rules. We will start with rituals and roles. Then we will see in more detail the role of the Scrum Master, the role of the Project Owner, the role of the development team, and we will finish with the service of Scrum Master to the other roles. Scrum rituals. There is the daily Scrum, sprint planning, sprint reviews, retrospectives, and backlog refinement. The important thing to remember is that this is all part of the Scrum culture. The Scrum culture is part of these methods and part of what makes this culture, that this work, that this operation works, or that these rituals are really put into practice, is this discipline. The more you do this, the more familiar and easy it will become for you, the more you will value them. It's very easy. Next, we will see the rules. As you have understood, Scrum is very simple. It's about simplicity, minimalism, and delivering value. What allows us to do this is that in Scrum we have 3 roles: the Scrum Master, the Project Owner, and the development team. We will immediately see the role of the Scrum Master, which is a key role. I can tell you that anyone can play this role. It doesn't have to be someone designated by the company. It doesn't have to be someone who has this official role. It can be anyone on your team who knows project management and has a good knowledge of Scrum. I put several points to you: a facilitator who leads, supports, guides and helps, who removes obstacles, who leads daily stand-ups, who keeps the team focused and on goals and objectives, who manages deadlines. Indeed, he is there to facilitate and defend Scrum within the company. He is someone who will lead, support, guide and help the team. He is going to help you solve problems, remove obstacles, who is going to support you and make you know the Scrum team by making sure that it reaches its goals on time and on budget. I put in other points: not a traditional team leader or project manager, facilitates key sessions and encourages the team to improve, removes barriers and helps the team achieve their goals, ensures adherence to Scrum frameworks and rituals, department manager, team coach, works collaboratively with the project owner. The Scrum Master is not a traditional team leader. He is rather a guide, a servant. He is not there to tell you what to do in the traditional sense. He is there to help you do your job, to help you remove obstacles that impact the development team. He is not there as a boss. He is there to facilitate you, to make sure you have everything you need, to make sure you know the Scrum team is focused on delivering on time, to make sure the team follows the discipline of doing the various Scrum rituals. He is also there to work closely with the project owner and make sure we're focused on the right priorities. That's it for the Scrum Master roles. We will move on the role of the project owner, which is also a key role. I put several points. Represents customers and stakeholders, defines the project in customer-centric terms, owns the project backlog, prioritizes based on importance and dependencies. A Scrum team should only have one project owner. One person can be the project owner for more than one team. The project owner will be a person who will work closely with the Scrum Master and the development team. He will essentially decide on the priorities on which the team should focus based on the customer's needs. It can be the customer himself, it can be a person who represents the customer. Usually, it is a person who comes from the company who has a commercial profile. In any case, he represents the interest of the customer. The project owner is essentially responsible for the project backlog and in particular for what we will deliver. He defines the priorities according to the need. A Scrum team should ideally have only one project owner. We would not want multiple people trying to define priorities. It wouldn't be possible. So we have to identify him before we even start the project. I put in other points, bridge between team and stakeholders, someone different from the Scrum Master, guides what is delivered, negotiates priorities, scope, funding, and schedules. The project owner is the bridge between the team and the stakeholders, is in close collaboration with the leaders, with the customers. He is the one who passes on the information to you. This can be what to focus on, what is important for the customer, and so on. Of course, the project owner always has a different role in the Scrum methodology, so he must be different from the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master should never play the role of the project owner because it would be a conflict of interest. There are two very different roles with a different purpose, and they work closely together. The Scrum Master will be more focused on delivery, while the project owner is focused on the business side with the customer. He will set the tone in terms of priorities. He will set the tone for priorities, for changes in scope, for changes in funding, for changes in schedules. We have finished with the role of the project owner and we will see the role of the development team. I put several points. Responsible for delivering the deliverable increments in each sprint, usually 3 or 9 members who perform tasks, empowerment and self-organization. Everyone involved in the Scrum team participates in this process to make sure we deliver on time and within budget. Teams are generally composed of 3 to 9 members. There may be business analysts, developers, designers, testers, and the list goes on. All of this will be different depending on your type of project. The important thing to remember is that the people on the team are the ones who do the work, the ones who make things happen in terms of delivery. We have already talked about deadlines, self-organization, empowerment, make decisions based on what needs to be delivered in the sprints. Some may wonder what the role of such a person is in the team. The roles are not different than their traditional role, except that they are part of a Scrum team and participate in rituals. They respect the principles, values, pillars, and work differently. Instead of a traditional sequential approach, they work together in an iterative approach. As we have already seen, the roles can be blurred, meaning a project manager could very help test in a sprint. That's it for the development team. We're now going to move on to the Scrum department, and we are going to focus on the role of the Scrum Master. We are going to talk about the Scrum Master service in relation to the product owner. I put several points for you. Make sure the project goals, scope, and domain are understood by all. Find techniques for effective project backlog management. Help the Scrum team understand the need for a clear and concise project backlog. Understand project planning in an empirical environment. Make sure the project owner knows how to organize the project backlog to maximize value. Understand and practice Agile. Facilitate Scrum events. As mentioned earlier, they work closely together and communicate continuously on priorities, objectives, risks, and deliveries. The Scrum Master is the equivalent of a coach. He will help the product owner, if he does not have much experience, to make sure that he is comfortable in his role. He will facilitate the retros, the events, and will make sure that everyone is in on the same wavelength as regards the objectives of the project owner. Now we will discuss the service of the Scrum Master in relation to the development team. Same, I put several points to you. Coaching the development team and transversality. Helping the development team to create high-value projects, removing obstacles to the development team's progress, facilitating Scrum events as needed, coaching the development team in organizational environments where Scrum is not yet fully adopted and understood. This involves a lot of coaching, facilitation, help and support, eliminating anything that might have an impact on the development team. The Scrum Master will work in collaboration with the development team and will ensure that the team follows the Agile rituals, principles, and values pillars. He ensures that the team understands the Scrum terminology. That's why he works closely with the team and the different people to help them in this journey. To facilitate the various rituals and ensure that, for example, if a team member has problems or encounters obstacles, the Scrum Master will be there to help. He is a leader, servant, as we have already seen. The most important thing is to allow the team to focus and deliver iteratively and continuously, to grow and develop iteratively and continuously. Finally, we will talk about the Scrum Master service in relation to the organization. Several points will be displayed, leading and accompanying the organization in adoption of Scrum, planning Scrum implementations within the organization, helping employees and stakeholders understand and implement Scrum and empirical project development, bringing about change that increases the productivity of the Scrum team, working with other Scrum Masters to increase the effectiveness of the application of Scrum in the organization. In short, the Scrum Master is there to help the Scrum change in the organization. He is a person who will advocate for Scrum and help the organization to achieve the Scrum project. He will lead the adoption of Scrum within the company, train people and help them understand the terminology, the benefits, the value, and most importantly, what Scrum can help them achieve and how it can be valuable to the business. It brings not just one thing but many things and adds a lot of value to the company. That's why there is a high demand for Scrum Masters all over the world. That's it for this chapter. I hope it was clear enough and you were able to enjoy it fully. I will see you soon for the rest. Hello everyone, we will continue on this shoot. Hello everyone, we are going to continue on the continuation of these videos of the Scrum Methodology from A to Z. We'll start the 5th chapter with this topic, launching projects with Scrum. We'll start with planning, documentation and estimation in Scrum and end with how to deliver and improve in Scrum. Let's look at the planning right away. Like everything else in Scrum, planning is iterative, it is continuous. It is done right after finishing a sprint and before starting a new one. It is usually a meeting where the Scrum team meets with a Scrum Master and they review what they are going to work on in the next sprint. They review and evaluate what needs to be delivered, what tasks need to be done, what the priorities and goals are, and what they are trying to achieve in this sprint. Finally, in theory, you can spend up to 8 hours for a month-long sprint. But in reality, Scrum teams, after having done it 2 or 3 times, usually spend less than an hour planning their next sprint because they already know what they are going to work on. We will talk about documentation because it's something that comes a lot. People think that in Agile we don't document anything when it's not true. Scrum is documented. We document the essential, what is important. We want to keep it productive, so we only do it when it's necessary. In short, we will never document something just for the sake of documentation. No documentation for documentation's sake. We will not see very long documents of 40, 60 or 80 pages that nobody will read because we know that everybody is busy and pressed for time. So yes, there is documentation that is part of the process, and like everything in Scrum, it is iterative, continuous, it is constantly being improved. The estimation consists in taking the user stories and assigning them points. It is a teamwork and collaboration with the development team and with the Scrum Master. You estimate as a team, and this is what will allow you to see what you will be able to deliver in the sprints. The key point and the main thing to remember is that it doesn't have to be perfect. Again, the concept of everything we've seen in Scrum is to iterate and improve over time. Delivery is also iterative and continuous, fast and frequent. It's an ongoing process, something that's been going on since the beginning of the project, and that's what's exciting. That's also what distinguishes it from traditional project management. You deliver from the beginning of the project, not just at the end. That's also why companies love it, because you deliver often and quickly. As we have already seen, you don't have to deliver the whole solution at the beginning. You can very well start by proposing a simple solution. This concept, like simplicity and agility, is part of the core, the essence of Scrum. You remember in the first video, I showed you the illustration that showed the differences between the traditional waterfall method and the Scrum method, where you could imagine a customer who wanted something that would allow him to move from point A to point B. You can see very well that with the traditional method, you can bring the solution in a rather long time, and on the other side, the Scrum method, which allowed him to reach this objective, to have this car by having throughout the project a solution which will be iterative and improved. We could see that at first we was offered a skateboard, then a scooter, a bike, a motorcycle, and then the car. The fact is that in Scrum we iterate the solution by making it better and better, and all along the life cycle of the project we bring value to the customer. Improvement is also continuous and iterative. Again, as you have noticed, the continuous and iterative method is common in Scrum because it's the heart and essence of Scrum. You continually improve and often think about how you can improve. This is done through retrospectives. We will come back to this a little later, but keep in mind that it's like a mini lessons learned session after each sprint. That's it for this little chapter, and I say to you soon for the continuation. Thank you. Hello, we are going to continue on this series of videos about the Agile Scrum method. Today we will see the artifact of Scrum. We will start by looking at the user stories in Scrum and the Scrum Kanban board. Then we will see the velocity and the burn down chart. We will finish with the project backlog and the sprint backlog. Let's start with the user stories. These are essentially the tasks that we will work on in the sprint. They are usually written in this form as I have to, so that. For example, a sentence that will come to mind: as a developer, I need to set up a homepage for the team to use. Then the points are essentially based on the complexity of the user story. The more complex and time-consuming it is, the higher the score. Once reviewed and validated, we will assign someone to complete it. Finally, the user stories constitute the backlog. Next, let's look at the Kanban board. The Kanban board is a visual representation of the team's work. It allows you to see in real time where the team is at and to ensure that everyone is on the same page. It is also a way of transparency. Not only everyone is on the same wavelengths, but everyone knows what everyone is working on. Everyone knows what the priorities are. The board can be represented physically on a board with simple post-it notes or via a digital tool such as Trello. It is presented with the 3 columns: the to-do column, the doing column, and the done column. This makes it clear, dynamic, powerful, and useful. Velocity is the speed of execution of the team. The concept of velocity is about the volume you do on a sprint and is calculated using the story points we just talked about. For example, how many story points did we deliver in a sprint? Let's imagine a sprint with 5 user stories with different story points that total 10 points. If you deliver all of these user stories, then your velocity will be 10 since we have 5 stories that total 10 points. What will be the velocity if I have 5 or 6 or 7 sprints? It will be the average velocity of the individual velocity of each sprint. Why measure it? Because it helps us in the planning process, but also because it helps us to track performance and efficiency. For example, if we should deliver the story points in a sprint and imagine that we only managed to deliver 8, then we should reflect on that in retrospect and see where we went wrong. Did we try to do too much? Did we run out of time? Did we encounter obstacles that we were not able to solve in time? There are many questions that allows us to improve. The condition speed, called the burn-down chart, is a visual representation that allows us to see how much work is left to do and how much progress we are making throughout our sprints. It's something pretty simple to understand with a graph like the one you can see on the screen. You have the y-axis, which represents the number of recent story points, and the x-axis, which shows us the sprints. If you look closely, you will see that the graph shows us the number of points that were delivered between 2 sprints. When you subtract the 2 sprints and do the delta between 2 sprints, it gives you the number of points that were delivered. It also allows you to quickly check how much work is left before you finish the project. That's it for the burn-down chart. The project backlog that we have already talked about, we are just going to summarize it, and I have put several points. An ordered list of everything that is known to be needed in the project. It's never complete. It's a living document. Present the requirements that are initially known and best understood. Dynamic evolves with the project, the context or the need. Includes all the functionalities, functions, requirements, improvements and fixes. Updated as needed. The backlog is essentially a list of everything that needs to be done in the project. This list is composed of user stories, as we have already seen. The project backlog is made before starting the project and before the first sprint. All the user stories you can think of will be recorded. Obviously, we don't predict the future, so you have to keep in mind that it's a dynamic and living document. It's not at all a static thing, so you can update it later. If you think of an idea that comes to you long after you have done it, you can add it. That's it for the project backlog. I'm summarizing because I have already told you about it. We end with the sprint backlog, which is a set of user stories taken from the project backlog and assigned to a specific sprint. The main difference is that the project backlog belongs to the project owner. He is the one who defines the priorities, while the sprint backlog belongs to the Scrum team, who can organize themselves as they wish to achieve the tasks. That's it for this little video. I hope you liked it and I say to you soon for the continuation. welcome back to this series of videos on the Agile Scrum method from A to Z. Today we are going to talk more specifically about the chapter Other Scrum Concepts. We will start by looking at the increments and the definition of done in Scrum. Then we will see the MVP and the things that help Scrum teams to succeed. Let's start with the increment. In Scrum, increments are essentially deliverables. It's what you have accomplished in a sprint. It's a step towards what you're trying to accomplish. It's progress. They are called increments because it's not a solution, but a solution. Something that can be used for your future sprints. Next, let's look at the definition of done. In Scrum, we only consider a solution if the acceptance criteria we have defined for this user story have been met. Remember that what we deliver comes from these user stories. So, in order for us to consider something complete, we need to make sure that those user stories have met our acceptance criteria before we even start the project. Of course, this will vary from team to team, as what each team considers to have done will be different. It will depend on the acceptance criteria set for each team, meaning there are no rules to this. So it will be very different for each team and it will be different for each project. Next, let's look at the MVP, the minimum viable product. With this concept, we think about the essentials and forget about comfort and luxury. We only think about what is strictly necessary, what is the strict minimum you can offer to reach a satisfactory result. This is exactly the example we saw with this customer who wanted to go from point A to point B, so he wanted a car. In the Scrum model, he has offered a skateboard on the first delivery. That is exactly what happened. The MVP in this situation will be the skateboard because it's the most simplistic thing you can build to get from point A to point B. It meets the requirements perfectly and is going to allow you to deliver quickly and improve it over time. That's it for the MVP. Now we will look at things that help Scrum teams improve. There is a set of small things, a competent Scrum Master and the support of a product owner. The role of the product owner means you don't have to have all those difficult conversations with management and with stakeholders in case of a change, for example. All this will help the Scrum team. Empowerment to make decisions will give the team the power to make decisions based on their needs. This will be a key element of the strategy. It is what will make the team successful. Co-location, which means that ideally the people working on a Scrum project should be sitting together in the same room or in an open space. This becomes really important when you move to rituals such as the daily Scrum because you're going to be talking every day over a fairly short period of time, so it will make it easier for you. Online collaboration, as the teams will work with several tools and the different rituals we will do. What can help them is to do online collaboration, for example, setting up a chat, having a digital Kanban board, which will be very useful in case of absence. acceptance of volatile requirements and unpredictable challenges. Make sure you accept that there will be volatility and changes in requirements and that there will be unpredictable challenges. Your retrospectives, your iterative processes, your continuous improvements are there to help you overcome these challenges to achieve your goals. Finally, the last thing to emphasize is the training. It is very important with coaching. Make sure your team has been trained in Scrum. That will allow you to work together on a common ground. That's it for all these small points that can help you and the teams in the executions in their project, and especially not to forget a very good leadership with the product owner and the Scrum Master. We finished with this video and I say to you soon for the Hello and welcome to the continuation of this series of videos on the Agile Scrum method. In this part, we will talk about frequently asked questions. Let's talk about frequently asked questions about Scrum and start with the first question. What is Scrum? Is it an acronym? This question comes up a lot. People think Scrum is an acronym when it's not. Scrum is not an acronym and does not mean anything in particular. It is just a term taken from rugby, as we have seen earlier in this course. No, it is used to describe this Agile Scrum methodology. The second question that often comes up is, what is the difference between Agile and Scrum? Often, people have this misconception that there are two different things. In reality, yes, there are, but at the same time, there are not. Let's clarify. Scrum is one of the many Agile methodologies. It is the most popular and widely used of all Agile methodologies. That's why when people talk about Agile, 90% of the time they are really talking about Scrum. Many times they don't even know the term Scrum or that there are other Agile methodologies. Third question that comes up often, why is Scrum so popular? Why is it more popular than other Agile methodologies? The reason is quite simple. Scrum is so popular because it's a simple methodology that is easy to use and understand. It relies on documentation, processes, and so on. So Scrum has become the most used Agile methodology worldwide. People love it because there is nothing mysterious or complex about it. Sometimes people who have never heard of it get scared while waiting for the term of this methodology, like user story, retrospectives, and so on. Once trained, they realize that it's very easy to understand, use, and implement, and most importantly, that this methodology offers value and is very customer-centric. That's all for this frequently asked question. I hope it will have more for you. See you next time. Hello and welcome to this series of videos on the Agile Scrum method from A to Z. Today we will see the Scrum retros. We will first talk about the daily Scrum, then the sprint, and we will finish with the sprint review meeting and the retrospectives. Let's start with the daily Scrum. This is a short, focused daily meeting where the team meets to make sure they are on track. It should last no more than 15 minutes, ideally less. The meeting is also known as a daily stand-up since, as you can see in the image, it is a meeting during which the team stands. During this meeting, you try to answer 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? What problems did you encounter? Each team member will answer these 3 questions. This daily scrum is therefore reserved for the team. The project owner will not be concerned by this meeting, only the team and the Scrum Master. That's it for the daily scrum. The sprint. You all know pretty much what a sprint is. Let's go back to it a bit. A sprint is a period of 1 month or less, usually 2 weeks, during which the Scrum team strives to deliver an increment, a product, or a service. Once you have defined what you are going to work on in a sprint, ideally you don't want any changes to occur, even though in Scrum changes were already accepted and well regarded. The problem is that if you make changes during that sprint, you risk delivering late. So we prefer to make changes in the next sprint. One might wonder if the length of our sprint could vary. The answer is no. Ideally, it would be better to keep a defined period throughout the cycle of your project. For example, if you start with a 2-week sprint, then all your sprints will be 2 weeks long, and not 1 week here, then 3 weeks there, then back to 2 weeks. However, keep in mind that Agile Scrum is easy, so if you find that 2 weeks is too short for your team, then you can adjust your sprint. If you start with 2 weeks and you realize that it's too short, you can lengthen the sprint. Start with 3 weeks, but continue with 3 weeks in each sprint. Remember that the goal of Scrum is to continuously improve. So if something doesn't work, don't continue. During your sprints, you will have daily Scrum meetings every day for 15 minutes where you will discuss with your team the 3 questions we just talked about. You will also do your development, work with the realization of what you are doing, and after the sprint, you will have your retrospectives during which you will think about improvements. The other great advantage of the sprint is that it's a very short period. You work on a particular set of user stories, which limits exposure to risk and cost. This is also a reason why companies love Scrum, because it limits the exposure to risks and costs. We will even say it minimizes them. You limit what can go wrong, you limit costs, and you make sure you deliver quickly and often. This is one of the great advantages of the Scrum concept. Now let's look at the sprint review. This is an informal meeting that occurs at the end of the sprint and can last up to 4 hours for a 1-month sprint. During this meeting, we will essentially review and evaluate the result of the previous sprint. What comes out of it will be useful for your next sprint. During this meeting, you will review your velocity, burn down chart, and other metrics to see how you performed as a team. You will also update the project backlog, and this is where you can, for example, include more user stories or delete some. You will also review your project schedule and budget and so on. In short, you review your sprint and what you have accomplished in order to put it all together for the next sprint. So we end with the retrospectives. You can think of it as an exercise in which you meet with your team to review what went well, what went poorly or not at all, and what we can do differently. It's a continuous improvement exercise, like everything else in Scrum. You do it not at the end of the project, like in traditional project management, but after each sprint, so that you can take the lessons learned into your next sprint and make sure that you make the necessary improvements so that you can meet the deadline and your goal. It is best to make these meetings informal so that each team member feels comfortable and can answer these 3 questions. You can do this very well as a round table and write down the answers on a Word document, a board, or a digital tool like Trello. This way, you will know what worked, what didn't work, and what can be done differently. The entire team contributes its perspective to each of these 3 questions. This happens after the sprint review and before the next sprint is planned. It's pretty clear, and so it's a meeting that can last up to 3 hours for a month-long sprint. That's it for this chapter, and I will see you soon for the rest. Hello and welcome to this series of videos on the Scrum methodology from A to Z. In this chapter, we will discuss the conclusion. We'll start by looking at why companies like Scrum, then we will look at the opportunities, and then the different positions. We will continue with the Scrum process, and we will finish with the Scrum team. First of all, why do companies like Scrum? We have already talked about why companies like Scrum. I will just summarize a few points. Companies can see the difference from traditional project management. As we said, you get results much faster than in traditional management projects. Promotes a sense of urgency, creates a results-oriented mindset, a results-oriented culture. Consistent delivery, tangible benefits, helps people grow and continually improve. With Scrum, you get your goals on time, on budget, and often ahead of schedule. So it's rewarding. People are excited to work together on Scrum projects because they can see the value. That's why companies love Scrum so much. It's also why there is a high demand for Scrum Masters in the market. More and more companies are turning to Scrum. Opportunities. There are many job opportunities for people with Scrum knowledge. We have jobs for different industries, jobs all over the world with good salaries. If we have certifications, that's a plus. You know that by following this course, you have learned a significant amount of Scrum concepts, which will allow you to work on projects. Why not share your knowledge with your colleagues, friends, family, or to continue and why not apply for one of these offers? Then the positions. There are different roles: Scrum Master, Agile Coach, Senior Scrum Master, Agile Operations Lead, Scrum Coach, Agile Delivery Manager, Agile Project Manager, Agile Project Management, Agile Business Analyst, Agile Project Lead. I have put some of them here, the most common ones, those you will find most often. You will also find a large number of specific job titles with the term Agile. For example, what comes to mind, I already told you about it, Business Analyst. You may find Agile Business Analyst. Not that you needed to have specific Agile Business Analyst training, but if you are a business analyst at the core and you add Agile training, then you will be eligible for that job. You will also notice that the roles I have put on the screen are a little different from what we saw in theory. What is different from the theory is that we talked about the Scrum Master and the Project Owner. Here we have different titles that you will find on the job market. It's important to know that the demand is high. Today, with technology and the fact that we are hyper-connected, people expect things to happen fairly quickly. People expect there to be a close interaction with customers and users, that you can produce something really quickly and you can iterate and improve as you go. That's exactly what Agile is. Now I'm going to show you some job offers that you can find very easily. For example, on Pôle Emploi. We will look at this right away. We find ourselves on the Google page. We are going to go to the Pôle Emploi website. We will search for an offer by typing only the word Agile. We will retype Agile, search, and already 71 offers for Agile. You see you have Agile Project Manager, Senior Engineer Functional Analyst, and Agile Project Management, Agile Project Manager, Scrum Master Engineer, Agile Functional Project Manager, Scrum Master, Agile Coach. You have many job offers. Just by typing the word Agile. Now we will type, for example, Scrum Master. Maybe we will have more results. Indeed, 123 offers for Scrum Master. So you can see that for Scrum Master there are quite a few offers. Will we find a range in terms of salaries? Here I see a salary about 44,000, so you see it's more like a good salary. Here in Malakoff, in the department of 92, 57,000, and in Nantes, 44,000. These are annual salaries. So you see there are quite a few job offers with salaries that can be described as good, very good even. I will let you look for yourself, but you can see that there are quite a few offers and we have only done the Pôle Emploi website. You can look on LinkedIn and I think you will get just as many. We will now move on to the recap process. So, the Scrum process. At this point, we have already talked about all the different concepts of Scrum, artifacts, rituals, tools, principles, pillars, and so on. We have summarized this in one image, a simple illustration to help you understand the whole process. This is what you see on the screen. It's a very simple image because that's what Scrum is. Scrum is simple, with a simple framework, a simple methodology that delivers projects. Let's start from left to right. On the left, we have the project backlog, which represents everything we have to deliver in the project. Before starting the sprint, we create our sprint backlog, which will contain the user stories that we will deliver in a particular sprint. Then we go through the sprint, which lasts up to usually 2 weeks, and as we progress and work iteratively, we also do our daily scrum. The daily scrum, as we have seen, is a meeting of maximum 15 minutes during which we meet each day with the team to see what was done the day before, what will be done during the day, and the problems encountered. Once this sprint is completed, we deliver an increment, a deliverable product or service, and then repeat the process and so on. That's why you have these circles, because it is a cyclical process, a continuous process. That's also why we call it the iterative process, because it is continuous and it builds what's been done before. Through this illustration, you can see the simplicity of Scrum. That's why it is so powerful. As we have said before, this methodology is powerful because it allows you to deliver quickly, often reaching your business goals much faster than if you have a traditional project management approach. Finally, we will see the different roles of the Scrum team, namely the project owner, the development team, and the Scrum Master. These 3 roles together form a Scrum team. Just remember that the project owner is a person who represents the final customer and his needs and priorities. The development team will be composed of people who will actually do the work. The Scrum Master is a facilitator, an advocate of Scrum in the whole process. He ensures that the team delivers its results on time and within budget. That's it for this chapter and that's it for this course. I hope you enjoyed it and that it gave you a lot of knowledge. See you soon.